The 1970s were a golden era for horror, producing films that still influence the genre today. Here are the top 10 most iconic and chilling horror movies from that decade. Of course, I had to include popular horror films like Jaws and Alien, but neither of them is at number 10. I will also include ratings and where to watch, so let's get into it. George A. Romero's 1978 Dawn of the Dead is widely regarded as one of the greatest horror films of all time and a landmark in the zombie genre. As the second installment in Romero's Living Dead series, following Night of the Living Dead in 1968, it expands upon the bleak, nihilistic worldview of its predecessor while injecting biting social commentary, visceral gore, and a broader, more ambitious narrative scope. Mainly set in a suburban shopping mall, the film is a chilling allegory of consumerism, conformity, and the fragility of civilization.
Weren't willing to accept your solutions, Doctor, and I, for one, don't blame you.
Every dead body that is not exterminated becomes one of them. It gets up and kills. The people it kills get up and kill.
The film opens in chaos. Civil order is breaking down as a mysterious plague turns the recently deceased into flesh-eating zombies. Amid the crumbling societal structure, four survivors, a television traffic reporter, Stephen, played by David Emge, his pregnant girlfriend, Fran, played by Galen Ross, and two SWAT team members, Roger, played by Scott H. Reiniger, and Peter, played by Ken Foree, commandeer a helicopter and flee the city. They find temporary refuge in a massive abandoned shopping mall. There, they attempt to build a new life, fortifying their space, stocking supplies, and enjoying the material comforts of the consumer haven. But their fragile utopia is short-lived. The threat of the undead outside is constant, and tensions within their group grow. Eventually, a marauding biker gang invades the mall, leading to carnage and the inevitable collapse of their carefully constructed world. Romero's direction is confident and methodical. The film's pacing balances moments of quiet dread with explosive action. The mall, shot at the Monroeville Mall in Pennsylvania, becomes a character in its own right. Its fluorescent lit corridors both garish and haunting. The contrast between the sterile consumer paradise and the gore-soaked violence heightens the film's thematic tension. Dawn of the Dead is arguably the most influential zombie film ever made. It redefined the genre, transforming zombies from mindless ghouls to metaphor-laden symbols of societal collapse. Filmmakers from Zack Snyder, who directed the 2004 remake, to Edgar Wright's Shaun of the Dead, have cited Romero as a key influence. Romero's direction, combined with strong performances and groundbreaking effects, ensures that this film remains both terrifying and thought-provoking nearly 5 decades later.
What are they doing? Why did they come here?
Some kind of instinct, a memory of what they used to do. This was an important place in their lives.
Number 2, of course, you cannot talk about 1970s horror without mentioning the original 1979 sci-fi movie Alien. Ridley Scott's 1979 Alien is widely regarded as a landmark in both science fiction and horror cinema. Released at a time when space exploration in film was still heavily influenced by Star Wars optimism and adventure, Alien brought an entirely different tone to the screen, dark, claustrophobic, and terrifying. The film introduces the xenomorph, one of the most iconic creatures in cinematic history, and marked the breakthrough of Sigourney Weaver as Ellen Ripley, a defining female protagonist in genre cinema. The story centers around the commercial spaceship Nostromo, whose crew is awakened from stasis to investigate a mysterious transmission from a nearby planet. On the desolate LV-426, they discover a derelict alien ship and a chamber filled with eggs. When one of the eggs hatches and a creature attaches itself to crew member Kane, played by John Hurt, the crew brings him back on board, unleashing a horror that will pick them off one by one. The film's structure is methodical, almost procedural, in its early stages, but once the alien bursts from Kane's chest in one of the most famous scenes in film history, the tone shifts to a survival horror scenario where no one is safe and the ship becomes their prison.
It stopped. Didn't say anything like that except, molecular acid.
Must be using it for blood.
It's got a wonderful defense mechanism. You don't dare kill it.
Ridley Scott's direction is meticulous. He masterfully crafts a slow burn atmosphere of dread, emphasizing isolation, the vastness of space, and the vulnerability of the human body. His use of darkness, silence, and minimal music heightens tension, creating a pervasive sense of unease throughout. The set design by H.R. Giger, who also designed the Xenomorph, is biomechanical, eerie, and unforgettable. The alien ship and creature designs blend organic and technological aesthetics in a way that had never been seen before, lending the film a truly otherworldly quality. Sigourney Weaver's performance is understated but powerful. She brings credibility and grit to Ripley, making her one of the most enduring heroes in genre history. Ian Holm, as Ash, the ship's science officer, delivers a subtly unsettling performance, especially once his true nature is revealed. The ensemble cast overall is convincingly naturalistic, adding to the film's grounded tone. The effects, though practical and pre-digital, remain effective and disturbing.
And there were often things that really did frighten me, the special effects were so good, and that you never had to wait for them, and you never saw, that it was actually made of, sticks and stones or something. Everything really worked and was convincing, so that helped the actors tremendously in keeping that illusion going of being terrified.
Number 3, The Little Girl Who Lives Down the Lane, released in 1976, is a moody and unnerving psychological thriller that seamlessly weaves themes of independence, secrecy, and predation into a tightly constructed narrative. Set against the eerie quietude of a small seaside town in Maine, the film unravels slowly, but with growing tension. Featuring an extraordinary performance by a young Jodie Foster, the film remains a haunting, intelligent piece of 1970s cinema that is often overlooked but deeply compelling. 13-year-old Ryn Jacobs, played by Jodie Foster, lives alone in a rented house, ostensibly with her poet father, who is always resting or working upstairs. As neighbors and townspeople begin to ask questions, it becomes clear that Ryn is hiding something or someone. Her composed demeanor belies a deeper, more disturbing reality. As various adults attempt to intrude upon her solitude, particularly the lecherous Frank Hallett, played with unsettling charm by Martin Sheen, and his socialite mother, Alexis Smith, Ryn must defend her autonomy and secrets. The only person who begins to understand her is Mario, a slightly older teenage boy, played by Scott Jacoby, who becomes both her confidant and possible ally in her fight to maintain control over her life. Director Nicholas Gessner keeps the atmosphere claustrophobic and quiet, favoring long takes, hushed conversations, and subdued lighting to build a sense of dread. The use of location, a picturesque but isolated New England house, enhances the feeling of detachment from the outside world. The Little Girl Who Lives Down the Lane has grown in reputation over the years, gaining a cult following. It's often compared to Hitchcock's work for its psychological intensity and suspenseful pacing. Although not as widely remembered as some of its contemporaries, it remains a masterclass in minimalist storytelling and character-driven suspense. A haunting, intelligent thriller anchored by one of Jodie Foster's most impressive early performances, The Little Girl Who Lives Down the Lane is an unsettling look at what it means to be a child in a dangerous adult world.
I even had to ask him why the police don't do anything about it.
Why should they do anything?
When your son gives candy to pretty little girls?
Number 4. Deep Red was released in Milan and Rome, Italy in 1975 and in the United States in 1976. Directed by Italian giallo maestro Dario Argento, it stands as a seminal entry in the giallo genre. an Italian blend of horror, thriller, and mystery laced with Baroque stylings and psychological undercurrents. With its mesmerizing cinematography, stylish violence, and haunting soundtrack by the band Goblin, Deep Red is often heralded as a precursor to the slasher film, yet it remains a unique cinematic experience in its own right. The film follows Marcus Daly, played by David Hemmings, a British jazz pianist living in Rome, who witnesses the brutal axe murder of a psychic medium, Helga Ullmann, played by Masha Merrill. Haunted by the belief that he saw a crucial clue at the murder scene, Marcus sets out to unravel the mystery. His investigation draws in Gianna Brezzi, played by Daria Nicolodi, a tenacious journalist. As Marcus delves deeper into the case, more bodies pile up, and a sinister secret buried in a child's drawing and an eerie abandoned house begins to emerge. Dario Argento's direction is masterful, emphasizing atmosphere over exposition. He constructs a visual tapestry filled with vibrant color schemes, especially red, elaborate tracking shots, and unorthodox angles. The pacing is deliberate but tense, allowing the mystery to unravel with meticulous detail. The murder scenes are both shocking and artful, characterized by sudden bursts of violence and meticulous choreography. One of the most iconic scenes involves a mechanical doll, blending surreal horror with psychological unease.
I can feel death in this room. I feel a presence, a twisted mind, sending me thoughts, perverted, murderous thoughts.
Number 5. Nicholas Roeg's Don't Look Now is a landmark in psychological horror cinema. Released in 1973, this haunting and surreal film seamlessly blends grief, suspense, and the supernatural into a visually and emotionally compelling experience that lingers long after the credits roll. Adapted from Daphne du Maurier's short story, the film is as much about the lingering effects of trauma and the elusiveness of perception as it is about ghosts and premonitions. The film opens with a tragedy: the accidental drowning of a young girl, Christine, in rural England. Her parents, John, played by Donald Sutherland, and Laura Baxter, played by Julie Christie, devastated by the loss, travel to Venice, where John has taken on a church restoration project. There, amidst the decaying beauty of the city, they encounter two elderly sisters, one of whom claims to be clairvoyant and insists that she can see their dead daughter. Laura is comforted, even rejuvenated, by the possibility that Christine may still be with them in some form. John, a pragmatic skeptic, is disturbed. As their time in Venice unfolds, eerie and inexplicable events begin to multiply, culminating in a shocking and unforgettable finale. Donald Sutherland delivers a masterful performance as John Baxter, conveying the turmoil of a man struggling between reason and the supernatural, grief and denial. Julie Christie is equally compelling, portraying Laura with warmth, fragility, and grace. Together, their chemistry is raw and authentic, especially in the infamous love scene, which was controversial for its realism, but serves as a powerful moment of intimacy between two broken people. The city of Venice is also a character in its own right. Roeg transforms the romantic city into a labyrinthine nightmare of foggy canals, crumbling buildings, and shadowy figures. Cinematographer Anthony B. Richmond captures both the beauty and menace of the setting with chiaroscuro lighting and fluid camera movements, enhancing the atmosphere of dread and mystery.
She's wearing a shiny little Mac. Christine. Oh, but she's laughing, she's happy as can be.
Number 6. Once again, we have Italian director Dario Argento on the list, but this time for his 1977 film Suspiria, which is often regarded as the most visually striking horror film ever made. The 1977 film Suspiria is partially inspired by Thomas de Quincey's 1845 collection Suspiria de Profundis, a Latin title meaning Sighs from the Depths. This work, composed of prose poems and essays, delves into the nature of memory and consciousness, often filtered through the lens of opium-induced hallucinations. Widely regarded as one of the most distinctive literary creations of its time, Suspiria de Profundis combines Gothic introspection with philosophical depth, elements that subtly inform the dreamlike horror of Dario Argento's film. Set in a prestigious ballet academy in Freiburg, Germany, the film follows American student Susie Banyan, played by Jessica Harper, who arrives to discover that something supernatural and sinister lurks behind the academy's refined facade. As her peers disappear and die in grotesque fashion, Susie slowly uncovers a terrifying coven of witches. Suspiria is not just a film, it's an overwhelming visual experience. Shot by cinematographer Luciano Tovoli on Technicolor stock, the movie explodes with saturated reds, blues, and greens, creating an atmosphere that's both nightmarish and hypnotic. The production design by Giuseppe Bassan is surreal and gothic, with stained glass, bizarre architecture, and baroque interiors that contribute to a sense of dreamlike disorientation. Some viewers may find Suspiria frustrating. The plot is thin and sometimes incoherent, with minimal character development. The dialogue, especially in dubbed versions, can come off as stilted or bizarre. It's not a film for everyone. However, for lovers of atmospheric horror, experimental cinema, or avant-garde visuals, it's an essential and unforgettable experience. It remains a cult classic and a frequent entry in lists of the best horror films ever made. It has influenced countless filmmakers and artists. Number 7. Based on Stephen King's 1974 novel, Brian De Palma's 1976 Carrie is a groundbreaking horror film that blends supernatural powers with real-world cruelty and psychological torment. Carrie White, played by Sissy Spacek, is a shy and awkward teenage girl who lives under the strict rule of her abusive and fanatically religious mother, Margaret White, played by Piper Laurie. At school, she's a constant target of ridicule and bullying, especially after a traumatic locker room scene where she experiences her first period and panics, not understanding what's happening to her. The other girls mock her cruelly, and the incident sets off a chain of events that culminates in both pity and punishment. Carrie begins to discover she possesses telekinetic powers, the ability to move objects with her mind, which seem to strengthen under emotional distress. After a classmate, Sue Snell, played by Amy Irving, regrets her role in the bullying and convinces her boyfriend Tommy, played by William Catt, to take Carrie to the prom, and it seems that Carrie may finally have a chance to feel normal. But another classmate, Chris Hargensen, played by Nancy Allen, along with her boyfriend Billy, played by John Travolta, plans a cruel prank involving a bucket of pig's blood. The moment of humiliation at prom is the final straw for Carrie, and she unleashes her fury with deadly, uncontrollable power. The final prom sequence is masterfully constructed, building tension with long silences, foreshadowing, and then erupting into blood-soaked carnage. Sissy Spacek is the emotional and narrative anchor of the film. Her portrayal of Carrie is pitch perfect, a mixture of innocence, repression, fear, and eventually fury. Spacek brings an eerie vulnerability to the character, making her both sympathetic and terrifying. Her wide-eyed stare in the film's climactic moments is iconic, a mix of heartbreak, vengeance, and madness. Piper Laurie's portrayal of Margaret White's religious mania is unnerving, and her deranged love-hate relationship with her daughter adds a layer of psychological horror that's as disturbing as the supernatural elements.
Boys. The boys! The boys! Yes, the boys! After the blood come the boys, like sniffing dogs, grinning and slobbering and trying to find out where that smell comes from. Where the smell is, that smell.
Carrie is more than just a horror movie. It's a tragedy laced with supernatural retribution. It's a searing portrait of abuse, repression, and the monstrous results of human cruelty. De Palma's stylish direction, paired with Spacek's unforgettable performance, makes this film not just a genre classic, but a deeply emotional and unsettling experience. A beautifully shot, emotionally charged, and horrifying film that remains as potent today as it was nearly 50 years ago. It's not just scary, it's sad, strange, and unforgettable.
Please, God can. We'll pray. No! We'll pray, woman. No! Pray to Jesus for our lost saving souls. No! God visited. Curse. This was the this was the second curse, and this was a curse of childbearing. And he brought forth pain and sweat and blood. Genesis 3:16.
Please let me out!
Number 8. Of course, the 1978 Halloween movie is on the list. John Carpenter's 1978 Halloween is a seminal slasher film that helped define and popularize the horror genre as we know it today. With its low budget, minimalist style, and a chillingly simple story, the film became a cultural touchstone and launched a franchise that would span decades. Its legacy lies in its tight direction, haunting score, and the introduction of an enduring horror icon, Michael Myers. Set in the fictional town of Haddonfield, Illinois, Halloween opens with a chilling prologue. On Halloween night in 1963, 6-year-old Michael Myers murders his sister with a kitchen knife. He is institutionalized for 15 years, only to escape in 1978 and return to his hometown. Donning a white mask, he begins stalking teenager Laurie Strode, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, and her friends, picking them off one by one. Meanwhile, Dr. Sam Loomis, played by Donald Pleasance, Michael's psychiatrist, is on a desperate hunt to stop his former patient. What follows is a tense, slow-burning chase that culminates in a terrifying showdown between Laurie and Michael. John Carpenter's direction is masterful, especially given the film's modest budget. He employs long, fluid Steadicam shots. The film's pacing is deliberately slow, building dread through silence and shadows rather than jump scares. The real genius lies in Carpenter's use of space and movement. The suburban setting, often seen as safe and familiar, becomes a haunting backdrop where evil can lurk anywhere. Perhaps the most unforgettable element of Halloween is Carpenter's score, composed by the director himself. The main theme is minimalistic yet relentlessly suspenseful. It creates a pulse-like rhythm that becomes synonymous with approaching danger. The score is used sparingly but effectively, accentuating the film's quieter moments with sudden bursts of tension.
I enjoy scaring people a lot. I enjoy suspense and action and thrills. I enjoy comedy. I guess mainly the genres of films. I'm big on form and structure, and within a certain context doing certain things. The film I'm making now, Halloween, hopefully is a horror film, loaded with scares, suspense scares, hopefully not grisly or gory, but suspenseful, making people on the edge of their seats. I enjoy doing that.
Halloween is rich with subtext, as it explores the fear of the unknown, the loss of suburban innocence, and the idea of evil as something that can't be reasoned with. Michael Myers isn't given a motive or backstory, he simply is. Carpenter strips the character of humanity, turning him into a boogeyman figure, faceless, voiceless, and unstoppable. The 1978 Halloween remains a landmark in horror cinema, and its impact is still felt nearly 50 years later.
I remember I said to them, look, I don't know if it matters at all, but I really want this. I really will work really hard for you. Everybody were these young filmmakers, sort of just banding together to make this movie for no money.
Don't go, no, don't go in there, no.
I mean, it was wild. It was great. I remember sitting there going, oh God, this is so great.
Number 9. Jaws hit theaters in 1975 and changed Hollywood forever. Jaws is a landmark American thriller film directed by Steven Spielberg, based on Peter Benchley's 1974 novel of the same name. Widely regarded as one of the greatest films in cinematic history, Jaws set the standard for modern blockbuster filmmaking and played a pivotal role in shaping the summer movie season as we know it today. The Jaws novel, by American author Peter Benchley, first published by Doubleday in 1974. The idea for the novel was sparked by Benchley's fascination with shark attacks, particularly after reading about the real-life adventures of Montauk shark fisherman Frank Mundus in 1964. In 1971, while working as a freelance journalist, Benchley was commissioned by Doubleday to turn that fascination into what would become one of the most iconic thrillers in modern literature. The 1975 Jaws film is set in the fictional beach town of Amity Island, where a young woman is killed by a shark while swimming in the ocean. The local police chief, Martin Brody, played by Roy Scheider, wants to close the beaches, but the town's mayor resists, fearing the loss of summer tourism revenue. When more attacks occur, Brody teams up with a shark hunter, Quint, played by Robert Shaw, and a marine biologist, Matt Hooper, played by Richard Dreyfuss, to hunt and kill the massive great white shark terrorizing the waters. The central conflict pits humans against a relentless primal predator, exploring themes of fear, survival, and the limits of human control over nature. Spielberg's use of suspense, often showing little or none of the shark in early scenes, heightened fear through suggestion and sound. And we cannot talk about Jaws without mentioning John Williams' iconic score. 2 notes, just 2, and your heart starts racing. That theme is fear. Jaws faced significant production difficulties. The mechanical shark, nicknamed Bruce, frequently malfunctioned, forcing Spielberg to suggest the shark's presence rather than show it outright. Ironically, this limitation enhanced the suspense and made the film more terrifying. The movie not only instilled a generation with a fear of the ocean, but also revolutionized Hollywood's approach to big-budget filmmaking and marketing. Nearly 50 years later, it still has an impact.
Well, this is not a boat accident. It wasn't any propeller. It wasn't any coral reef. And it wasn't Jack the Ripper. It was a shark.
With a Rotten Tomatoes score of 100%, the 1974 Messiah of Evil comes in at number 10. Messiah of Evil, directed by Willard Huyck and Gloria Katz, is a surreal, atmospheric horror film that has gradually earned cult status since its release. Originally launched with little fanfare and plagued by distribution issues, the movie has since gained appreciation among fans of avant-garde horror and 1970s cinema for its dreamlike storytelling, eerie visuals, and apocalyptic tone. The film follows Arletty, played by Mariana Hill, a young woman who travels to the coastal town of Point Dume, California, in search of her estranged father after receiving unsettling letters from him. Upon her arrival, she discovers the town is nearly deserted, inhabited only by a few strange locals. As she delves deeper into the mystery, she encounters a mysterious trio of drifters and learns of a centuries-old prophecy involving a dark messiah and the return of the dead. The town's past is haunted by a figure known as the Messiah of Evil, a 19th century preacher who was exiled and vowed to return with a curse that would consume the living. Arletty's father was researching this history before vanishing, and his descent into madness mirrors the town's own creeping doom. The film builds to a bleak and unsettling climax, with Arletty herself teetering on the edge of sanity. One of Messiah of Evil's greatest strengths is its atmosphere. The film feels like a waking nightmare, disjointed, slow, and bathed in a cold, detached tone. Its pacing is deliberate, allowing tension to fester rather than explode, drawing viewers into an uncanny world that never quite reveals all of its secrets. 2 standout sequences, set in a nearly abandoned supermarket and a movie theater, are iconic for their quiet, creeping horror. In these scenes, the film emphasizes stillness and waiting, with horror arriving slowly, inevitably. The dialogue can feel stilted at times, and some performances are uneven, a reflection of the film's low-budget indie origins. But this roughness contributes to its off-kilter tone, making it feel less like a scripted movie and more like a disturbing recollection of a nightmare. Messiah of Evil is not a traditional horror movie. It doesn't rely on jump scares or a coherent linear narrative. Instead, it unsettles through tone, visuals, and creeping dread. Its low-budget trappings may deter some viewers, but for those who appreciate dreamlike horror like Suspiria, this film is a hidden gem. Sometimes, horror doesn't scream, it whispers, and in the case of Messiah of Evil, it murmurs like the tide, luring you into a fog-drenched nightmare you didn't realize you'd entered.
They're waiting for you. And they'll take you one by one, and no one will hear you scream. No one will hear you scream!
Horror movies in the 1970s marked a transformative era, blending psychological tension with visceral fear. This decade saw the rise of gritty, groundbreaking films that introduced a new realism and intensity to the genre. Filmmakers pushed boundaries with themes of the occult, serial killers, and societal breakdown, often reflecting the turbulent cultural climate of the time. The 70s established many horror tropes still used today and laid the foundation for the modern slasher and supernatural subgenres. I hope you enjoyed this list of the top 10 horror movies from the 1970s. To create this list, I started with a pool of 71 films from the decade and ranked them based on their Rotten Tomatoes scores from lowest to highest. As a result, some beloved classics like The Omen at 85%, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre at 85%, and The Exorcist at 78% didn't quite make the cut. Every film featured on the list scored above 90%, with Messiah of Evil earning a perfect 100%. Of course, the 70s were packed with horror gems, both famous and forgotten. So if you have a favorite that didn't appear here, feel free to share it in the comments.